In August, the filmmakers committed their first flagrant contract violation by showing the American cut to audiences at the American Film Festival in Deauville, France. On October 2nd, Daily Variety carried a full-page ad placed by Terry challenging not only the studio, but Sid Sheinberg directly.
I remember calling the next day, calling up Variety and said, I want to take out this ad. I want a full-page ad, and I want it bordered in a black border on it like a funeral announcement, an obituary, and then in the middle in just simple type, with a lot of white space around, just Dear Sid Sheinberg, when are you going to release my film Brazil? Signed, Terry Gilliam. And I think it cost me $1,500 or £1,500, I can't remember, it was something. And they did it. And then you forget about it, and then a week later it comes out, and you go blithely down to the newsagent, and you get the thing, and you open it up, and you realize you've just damned yourself forever in Hollywood. Because, it was just, I was stunned by it. I was shocked as much as everybody else was, I'm sure, because I suddenly realized what I had done. And it was, because there it was, the front page is all typed, $10 billion in the first second, $30 million in the second, money, 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 and you go page after page of money and success, and then you come to this very naked human question. And it was a stunner. Now, through all of this, what was interesting is that it was clearly building up, especially in the big cities, a sense of this thing. Because I was going on, Good Morning America with Maria Shriver and with Joel Siegel, with De Niro. Again, this is where a sense of honor is at work here, because Bobby, who doesn't promote his own films, knew he could be helpful, and despite the fact that the last thing he wants to do is go on and be interviewed, or nationally, he came on. And that was how we got on the shows, because we were offering them an interview with Robert De Niro and his buddy Terry. and so we go on there, and Bobby says 2 words, maybe it was 3, I can't remember. He was talkative that day. I think we might even got to 4. And it's and there's me, and Maria Shriver saying, I hear you have a problem with the studio. I said, I don't have a problem with the studio. I have a problem with one man. His name is Sid Sheinberg, and he looks like this. And I pulled out an 8x10 glossy and pointed on national television. Now, that kind of, bizarre, clown-like, weird behavior, must have driven Sid mad, because it was everything he hated and feared and couldn't comprehend and couldn't deal with. And that was the only thing I felt I could do, is to make this whole battle as personal as possible, not make it about corporate responsibility and gray men and faceless things. It was mano a mano. It was the little artistic David against the great guy who sat in the office called Sid. In the midst of the whole battle as it was going on, I remember I'd been invited to USC. They'd asked me to come out there at any time and give a talk. And so I thought, well, let's do it. Take advantage of this and bring out some audio-visual aids in the shape of a film. And I thought, this is the way to do it. We'll show Brazil to a bunch of students.
More than 300 students in the late Arthur Knight's film class at the University of Southern California were in the Norris Theater on October 18th when Gilliam appeared for a private, unauthorized screening of Brazil. There was just one small problem. The students had posted announcements all over campus days before.
And we get there, and we got a problem, because the guy who's in charge of the physical plant, the projector, said, we can't show this film because we got a call from Universal, and we can't do it. And I don't even know if they had a call from Universal, but the thing is, USC Film School is subsidized by the studios. And they don't want to do anything that might jeopardize their subsidy. It's the thing, it's a constant thing. Every time I go out to LA, you realize this is a city living in fear. Everybody is fearful of losing their little bit of the pie. And the guy said, we can't show it. I said, what do you mean you can't show it? I've come here all the way from London, England, in Europe, and this is part of my talk. And so it became a big, no, I'm not going to do this. And so I got onto my lawyer, and he said, can you contact the Universal lawyer and see if we can solve this?
I was there that day, and it was like a political rally from the 60s. For more than an hour, Terry divided his time between taking calls from his lawyer, who was negotiating with Universal's lawyers, and then reporting the conversations back to the delighted students.
I'm down with Arthur Knight on the stage with the students, talking about filmmaking and films, Brazil in particular, and every few minutes I'd be called out to take a phone call. I said, this is, to the students, this is what really filmmaking is about. It's not about camera angles, not about lenses, and not about film stock. It's about this. We spend most of our energy running up and down dealing with people in studios and legal people, and the battle went back and forth, and eventually my lawyer got the Universal lawyer to concede that we could show clips of the film. And so I thought, boom, go to the man who's in charge, wouldn't have anything to do it, even then.
But the day wasn't over. That night, Gilliam took his print to the California Institute for the Arts, where he'd also been invited for a show and tell, and this one came off.
It was like the Black Hole of Calcutta. It was this very small screening room, not enough room. People were piled up. They were in the aisles. They were on desks. They were everywhere. And we showed it. And there were so many, they had to show it again later for the rest of the people. And it was great. It was really, it was for a brief moment, we were part of some kind of revolutionary activity. There was a lot of flag waving and chanting and marching, feeling we'd done something. The film got seen by a few more people. And just little by little, this sense that there was a really good or interesting film here that needed help. And despite this embargo on showing the film anywhere, a whole series of clandestine screenings were set up for the LA film critics. And I don't know how many of them there were, but there seemed to be enough for the majority of the critics to have seen the film by the time it came to vote for their awards for the year. And that, to me, was, again, one of the great moments. I mean, everything about this was wondrous because we were getting away with murder. We were doing things that you're not supposed to be able to do. People were standing up that don't normally stand up. Sid Sheinberg was living in fear that, the floodgates were going to open and artistry and creativity would be allowed loose on the streets of Hollywood.
The last bit of strategy from Terry and Arnon was to show the American version of Brazil to members of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association on the hope that they would rally to the cause. And on Saturday, December 14th, in a back room of the Beverly Hills Gun Club, they did.
Terry, it's Steve. When you hear this, wow, first wow, hold your pants. And LA Critics Circle Award, Best Picture, Brazil, Best Director, Terry Gilliam, Best Screenplay, Brazil. Are you fucking, can you imagine that? I mean, I just got a call from Jack Matthews. I know it's about, I don't know, what, it's 5 o'clock here, so it's got to be 8 hours difference and 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but Terry, Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. God damn, I'm going to call on now, but I called you. I can't fucking believe it. Please get to the phone somehow and just at least hear that. Wow, wow, congratulations. I'll call Milchon now. I'll talk to you later, I hope. Bye.
It's so perfect. There is a God. Clearly, there's a God of symmetry somewhere in the world. Irony and symmetry are the two things that seem to have come together.
2 days after the critics' voting, Universal announced that the American version of Brazil would be opened in theaters in Los Angeles and New York before the end of the year.
I mean, we're winning the LA critics. It became something that people went to see where they wouldn't normally go to see in that numbers. I mean, I think the picture did what, somewhere between $5 and $10 million, and I think it would have done 1 or 2. So I mean, there was this whole bonus because of the publicity. I mean, I think that the publicity gave the audience, gave the picture a certain cachet that it never would have had.
The backlash followed the victory in record time. Within days, the New York critics ignored Brazil in their voting, which Universal executives interpreted as proof of the LA group's grandstanding. Every film I do seems to get incredibly mixed reviews, and this one must have been worse because there was such a build-up amongst the critics and everybody, an expectation of something so extraordinary that the fight was worth the fight. And what was interesting is the number of critics who obviously didn't like the film immediately said, well, the studio should have done what the studio should have done. I mean, the studio backed down, and yet that's what to me was the big shock, the speed with which they shifted from the filmmaker to the studio being right because they didn't like the film. Now that's a leap that is one doesn't necessarily follow the other, and then you begin to think, well, these people are really, we know where their hearts really lie. And Variety in particular I think was pretty nasty. They didn't like it, and they felt that the studio should have really got in there and got the scissors in there. And what nobody ever talked about was the fact that the studio was trying to change the film, change the nature of the film. It's one thing to say it's too long. It's another thing to say, let's go with the studio's idea of what the film should be. And I found that was shocking.